So you are pretty visible. And I think one thing that I enjoy about your visibility is that my experience of it is that it's very, it's interesting. There's a few things that always strike me. There's a level of authenticity and openness, but also the visibility doesn't conflict with the work. So it's almost kind of this fairly seamless integration between the work personality, I suppose, and the personal kind of brand and personal profile. And it all kind of, I guess, in many ways reinforces itself. Now, I don't know the extent to which it was kind of a thoughtful or deliberate thing. I have no idea.
Zero extent.
But I always watch it and I say to myself, oh, Mom, like maybe this thing skipped. I don't know. Just always like, okay, cool, well done. But I get to kind of, there's a little bit of a halo effect that I think also kind of benefits FirstCheck Africa, for example, and I get to enjoy it from that perspective by osmosis. But it's interesting because I think sometimes you see other founders where there's a massive kind of optimization for the visibility, and it feels uncomfortable because you say to yourself, yeah, I don't know if I think that the credibility piece is there to back it up. So anyway, all of this to say, how do you kind of think about those pieces?
Initially, I didn't think about it at all, honestly. But I think one of the things that I look for when I'm accepting to do anything is, does it tie back to one of three things?
Okay.
Right? Is it useful for whichever company you ask me to speak on behalf of?
Okay.
And is it useful for the personal values that I'm always trying to cultivate? And so a lot of my speaking engagements either have to do with women, speaking about women in tech, and in that case it's very easy to talk about it. Or it's just easy if someone says, oh, we want you to speak to this audience of women about your journey as a woman in tech. That's an audience I can relate to. Yeah. I don't have to prepare for it. I just go and then just be. Or your family has a story of Piggyvest. There was not enough of money for marketing. Yeah. Does this somehow add to Piggyvest profile? And when I can kind of subsume myself in the brand that way, where all of the publicity comes to me, but also to Piggyvest, I can justify it. And then same for FirstCheck. And so I guess optimization for use.
Yeah.
I don't want to appear for appearance sake. In fact, I'm doing it less so now because I think it's getting very diluted to just appear in places and say the same thing that you said 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And because I prefer to go out and deliver value or say something that I think needs to be heard, there's a lot less that I have to say these days. So if as a founder, you're trying to find the balance between how do I find a balance between, this visibility thing and just kind of doing the work, you have to find some kind of thread that ties the element or the work that you have to do appearing in places to the bottom line for your company, right? Is your target audience?
I hear you in theory.
Yeah.
But I suppose I always kind of make that case. If I'm building a company, or a brand, it makes sense for me to always be out there, because if I'm out there, people will know about the brand and whatever. But you still have, so if there's always, sometimes more tenuous than others, but there's always a little bit of that case to a certain extent is always relatively easy to make for somebody who wants to make the case. Yeah. I guess there are points at which it feels either you've kind of somebody has gone off piece, right? So, i.e., you're kind of, what's the word? Jumping ahead of your skis, as they say, right? I.e., I don't know.
Okay, so I get what you're trying to do.
Do you know what I mean? So how do you find,
in fact,
the
most direct way to put it is you have to have done the work.
Okay.
You can't just become a public speaker. I suppose you can. It's 2024 and people are doing whatever they want.
But at that point, you're a public speaker,
yes.
Right? You're
not a founder who's talking about. So there is always going to be, like they say, evidence day, right? You have to turn back and say, this is what I've done to allow me be able to speak authoritatively and credibly on this topic.
Yeah.
And when that lacks, it's very easy for it to become optimizing for visibility versus being heads down and building. So if you started a company I don't know, 6 months ago, and now you're speaking about the journey from pre-seed to seed.
Fair. That's actually a perfect example.
So it's like, I mean, a journey is a strong word for what you've done already.
Fair.
And so I think it's important that said speaker is aware of the fact that some merit has to go into everything that you do. Right? No one expects like a founder who's not had an interaction with the media to speak on the role of media in tech.
Fair.
It'd be ridiculous. And so that's kind of where you can see it leaking when you don't feel like they've done like the requisite background work. Or there's always the like incubatory stages of a company where you feel like you as a founder should be heads down building. The first
and
9,
I guess
12 months.
To your point, there's that kind of also as somebody looking in from the outside where you say to yourself, look, I don't really know what's going on at the company. I don't know what your revenue profile is. I don't know what your traction is. I'm not one of your investors. I don't know if you've hit $1 million. But I also know that you launched this company 3 months ago. And so you probably haven't.
And to listen to you, I have to have an inkling of the fact that you should be talking to me about this. Or that you actually can be. And if I don't think that you can, if your audience doesn't believe you, then you're doing the other thing where it's more for visibility than for work. And there should always be that balance in the middle of it.
I hear you, but I also think that I have a lot of... I tend to have a lot of sympathy. And look, this idea of kind of building personal brand and balancing that with having done the work, etc., is not only... It's not only about founders, right? It's also true for investors. And I think it's true for any professional where you're kind of trying to balance so speaking about yourself, which can come across as this very potentially inauthentic and something that lacks humility. And maybe to your point around sort of how you think about the 3 different things around it, there's always this thing around, I have a story to tell, I have something to contribute to the world, right? So it kind of has to come out of me and what have you. But I do have a lot of sympathy for women in particular. Where, we get this feedback a lot that we don't talk about ourselves enough. But it is important, like to the, on the investor side, your branding, your personal branding, your visibility can make the difference between, for example, your ability to raise the fund. It can make a big difference in terms of your ability to attract deal flow. It can make a difference between, many, many things that are actually important to you in an existential way on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yes. I think yes, you're right that like personal branding has become a bit of noise, right? And honestly, even the personal branding like implies that you're putting some thought into building this personal brand, and it's not just a thing that I've like subscribed to, which is that I want to be seen this way. I think it's easier to just leave.
But the wisdom the wisdom in those approaches is that you kind of you want to sort of have high signal around 2 or 3 things. Not even so much control the narrative. Like somebody asked me a question. I was filling in a form for something, and the question was, what is one thing that you are known for in the Africa, in your ecosystem? And I thought to myself, look, for better or for worse, like each of us is known for something, right? In our professional spheres, in the ecosystem, what have you. And so there is an interesting, it is good advice to say, to the extent that you are going to be known for something, then think about what you want to be known for.
Yeah, but isn't it also kind of easier on you as a person to allow the thread to emerge before doubling down on it?
Because,
like, you've been investing for what? I don't know, more than 10 years, right? And so when people start knowing you for something, before even I was conscious of you as a person, we knew of you as an investor at GE and all of these places. And so you let that thread become a thing first. And that is, whether we like it or not, the work. Right? Eloho is known for like being thoughtful about like the feedback that she gives you. It's because you've been giving that feedback, maybe without knowing, for a long time, and all of a sudden, people are realizing they had this common experience. And so if you started deciding and going to curate it, it probably doesn't land as smoothly as you want it to. And there's a lot of noise about personal branding now that If you think about
I find it intimidating.
the organic thing is now like more interesting than the inorganic. If you think about, because everyone is personal branding,
really
that a person who
intimidating.
isn't actually shines through more.
Yeah.
And I think that's something for all of us to think about.
That's a lesson
It's
for all of
easy
us.
for you to lean into the authentic and just be. When the brand comes out, when it emerges, it actually really does very strongly, and it's not a thing that you have to push. Because
I think it's interesting. I think what I see also is a lot of confusion between high quality production
and presentation.
Actually, you know what I mean? Like the branding is much softer than the font and the logo and the what have you. And so you see all of those elements, the design elements.
Yeah.
And then, so I've designed
this persona.
We have designed this persona
And
and
the core of it
designed
is
whatever.
just
But
not
then
that
the
strong.
core kind of strategy work around what do I want to be known for, all of these things, what do I care about?
The education of it all.
All of that. That piece you kind of say to yourself, well, okay, maybe this isn't landing so well because it just feels like it wasn't very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Even though it looks slick. And I think maybe that's where plus I think it's a lot of energy and a lot of work, right?
It is a lot of energy and a lot of work, and you can only do it for so long.
Yeah.
Honestly, especially if it doesn't come as like naturally or as easy. And so I would always like tell people to kind of just ease into it. Do the work first, let the common threads emerge, and then let people start kind of double clicking on it for you before you start building around it. Because at the end of the day, this is how people turn like all of their hobbies into work. Because everyone's like, oh, you're so good at it that you don't take time out to like think about do I even want to make this work before going into that.
I think there's something definitely to your point around having done the work, building the credibility, having the credibility, letting, and then almost kind of finding that inflection point where it is starting to speak for itself.
And then you can
and then
accelerate
doubling
it,
down and accelerating it. Anyway, I'm terrible at it.